This is the MixCoach podcast. On this episode of the podcast, we are going to be talking about the MixCoach Experience 2017, kind of recapping what happened at that event, as well as what potentially would happen at a 2018 event, March 15th, 16th, and 17th. Hey Kev, how's it going, man?
Hey John, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. So just recently, we had an amazing event called the MixCoach Experience Weekend. This is what the third or fourth year that we've done this event.
Yeah, that was year number 4, I think. I'm kind of losing count. They're kind of running together. Every one of them is a little different.
I know it's every one of them has progressively grown and things like that as well. So we did kind of a recap on the 2016 event, maybe about 6 months ago, something like that. Maybe about a year ago. I don't even know, but this event, we just wrapped it up. It was super cool. It was in Nashville. And we wanted to kind of just do a recap of this for the podcast folks and potentially, see if anybody would be interested in a 2018 event that we're planning.
Yeah.
So Kev, this event in Nashville, the 2017 MixCoach Experience Weekend, kind of run down for the folks listening, what was this event?
Well, this event, it seems like every event has sort of a different theme to it. This event, we were tracking one song. It was a song that I had written, and we got with Brent Rader, and he tracked the song. He kind of took his time on showing us how he mic'd the drums up, all the signal path, and then basically we just kind of recorded a one-man kind of band sort of thing. Brent's kind of has been my secret weapon. He's not so secret anymore, I don't think, since we've been talking about him a lot, and people on MixCoach I know have been calling him up and getting them to do their demos and their records and stuff. But anyway, we spent the first full day in the studio, which was Friday. We spent it tracking with Brent, and it was a really good experience. I know that I would love to say that when we put these events on that I already know everything that's going to happen, but the truth is I don't, and the other truth is I always learn something. I love being around people, and I love shared experiences. And I know that a lot of guys don't get a chance to. I think a lot of mixing engineers get frustrated because they never get to see how something like that is done, and they don't realize that, hey, I think I may be doing it wrong, and then they don't have any point of reference to judge from. And so all Friday this year was all about taking our time, tracking one song, and we. Another thing that happens, John, you'll agree with me, I think, is that as much as you try to plan out everything on these weekends that we get together and track and mix and things like that, the coolest stuff happens off the grid. It kind of happens, not really planned out, like some side discussion that happens before we get started, or some conversation over lunch that's like, oh, I never thought about that, or I always do this, and I never do this, and it's just, I don't know, just it's kind of like hanging out with friends. The more you hang out with somebody, the more you learn about them, and the more you just kind of glean from their knowledge. And I'm no exception. I learn from everybody I'm around. I try to be a lifetime student. So anyway, that kind of caps up Friday. Saturday, we spent the whole day in the studio with Joe Carroll down on Music Row. The last session he had in his studio before he moved to Omni, which was kind of cool. But we spent the day in there mixing with him. We got to kind of get inside his head a little bit to see how he goes about a mix. And man, he does some really cool stuff. And, again, you can plan it out and say, hey, from this time to this time, I want you to cover this, and this time to this time, cover this. And that just never happens. It always seems like, whoa, what did you just do there? And then, I always do this. Do you not do this? And everybody in the room is always kind of surprised and anxious to get home and try what they've learned. But that was all day Saturday. And again, we went to lunch Saturday, had dinner a couple of nights, and it was really cool. And also, one thing we do is on Thursday, before we get started, we gather somewhere and we usually just kind of get to know each other, which I think is the very cool thing, because when you have a community like we have, we can name off a dozen or more people that we feel like we know on the web. But at the same time, we don't get to see them that much. We get to hear their voice or maybe see a video, and that's always really cool to get to hang with somebody like that. So
It totally is.
I,
It's super interesting to me. Like whenever we plan these events, we kind of keep in mind, like we talk to the people who are registered to attend, who are interested in coming, and we kind of figure out like what do they want to learn, like what do they want to know, like what would be intriguing for them. And so sometimes we've had people be like, oh man, I really want to see how something would be tracked in a studio. So in 2016 we did a full on kind of like, hey, somebody was like, how are things tracked full band in Nashville? And so we did that. We had the session musicians come in, tracked full band in Nashville in a studio. This year it was like, hey, let's do the OneMan Band thing. Like if somebody's recording all of the instruments, or a producer is like building the track from scratch, how does somebody go about doing that? And so we kind of did that. We had the element on Saturday after Joe kind of did his essentially a live kind of tutorial where the attendees were able to kind of ask questions and really just dig deep into his workflow. It was interesting to me, like we pulled up all of them brought a session, pulled up that session in the studio there and kind of talked about it, talked about their mix on it, talked about what they were working on, what troubles they potentially had with it, what they were doing awesome, what could potentially be adjusted and tweaked. And that was really, really helpful for the people in the room. We ask the people whenever they are done with it. We ask them, okay, what was the most helpful thing? At the end of every day, we talk about, hey, what were the big takeaways? What did you learn today? What is the big thing for you today? And again, at the end of the event, we ask them, hey, what was the one thing that was the most helpful? And each person had something, drastically different.
That's what's funny.
Which is amazing. And so while we're in the room, it's amazing how things get kind of, whenever you're there in the room with people, you can kind of shape the conversation. You can kind of say, oh, I just saw you use a compressor there. What is that? What are you doing with the parallel compression? And it's like, oh yeah, okay, here, let's dig in. And I think everybody who is at these events, whether it be you or I or Brent or Joe, anybody who's involved, they're all open books. And so it's always interesting to me that that the things that the people share, and it's like, oh, here, this is how I set up this plugin. This is how I set up my vocal chain. It's anything that anybody wants to dig into. We kind of go that direction, and that's one reason why you talk about how it's like, oh, we always have these plans and we always have like a hit list of like the big things that we want to hit, and you always hit them. We don't always hit them like right on the times that we think we're going to, but we always hit them. But it also is like kind of a moving target where the people who are in the room are able to shape where we go with these things, which I find very cool and something that's unique to being in the room, something that you can't do for things like tutorials or things like, even like a Q&A webinar. You can ask the questions and that sort of, but it's hard to kind of get that hands-on thing where it's like, well, if you want to know, hey, why don't you come up here, show me what you would do, and then we'll kind of tweak it from there. Like there's lots of hands-on in the room things that you just can't get elsewhere.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed this year is that for the last couple of years we've been tracking, and that's all interesting. It really is, and there's something to be gleaned from all that stuff, because I saw the need for a lot of people who record at home, and guys who maybe listen to this podcast. A lot of you guys probably have never recorded anything outside of what you actually do, and sometimes what you realize is that, I don't know why, like this used to happen to me. I don't know why I can't get a better bass tone than I get. I'm using the same direct box and all that kind of stuff. And what you find out is that it's the bass, or maybe it's the way you're playing the bass, or maybe it's the strings or whatever. And you really don't know what you don't know. And so we put together tracks for the last couple of years because I wanted my guys to be able to experience, so this guy plays this kind of guitar, or, I've got a guitar that's more expensive than that, then why does this guy make it sound his cheap guitar or his less expensive guitar sound better. Little things like that you don't understand until you experience them. Well, we've done that for the last couple of years, and what I'm wanting to do this next year when we do another experience weekend is we're going to full on concentrate on mixing only. We're not going to do any tracking. We're just going to be mixing, and it's going to be kind of a new, fresh format. And for even the guys that come year after year, they're going to be able to zero in and really concentrate on mixing. Because one of the things that I think sets our site apart from a lot of other sites is that we offer feedback. We offer to listen to your mixes and give you some critique, and it's done over video, and that because that we feel like that's the best way to kind of emote facial expressions, because when you're mixing for a client, you're kind of trying to read their body language a little bit. You're watching how they react to a certain effect that maybe you put on it, or the low end or something, or if they start grimacing at a certain vocal part, you might think that, hey, I might need to tweak that vocal. There's nothing that replaces that. I mean, we've tried to do it with video, and I think it's very helpful. And the guys who do that month after month on MixCoach Member, then they automatically get better. But there's nothing like sitting in a room with a bunch of people you trust, and somebody says, hey, have you tried this? Not just me, but all of us, not just one person's opinion superimposed over someone else's mix, but a consensus, if you will, a mastermind, which is a pretty strong thing to do. That's what we do. That's what we're going to do on this next mix. So
Yeah.
I would encourage people, if you've ever wanted to just sit down and just concentrate on mixing, this year is the year you need to jump in on the experience weekend.
Yeah, man. And it's interesting, whenever you're even on the feedback in the feedback videos, that's really we make it a two-way kind of a conversation after the fact with comments and that sort of thing, but it's not as immediate, and it's not as much of a conversation as literally being in the room and saying, hey, how did you approach this? I'm hearing this here, what's going on, that sort of thing. So whenever you're in the room with people and you're sharing your mix with people, there's a pressure that's on, and it's a good kind of a pressure, because you're sitting there and you're like, okay, this is what I've got. And, and this is a room of people that are your peers and are, trying to learn, and that sort of thing is just like you, but they're also very kind. Like, that's the thing, like, about, there's been years past where we've had people who attend and they're like, oh, no, I don't want to share. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to, put myself up there, that sort of thing. And then finally, whenever somebody comes around, they go, yeah, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. If they realize that this is not a hostile environment. This isn't an environment where we're going to tear something to shreds or whatever. This is an environment that cares about everybody that's there, and cares about getting better, and helping each other out. Every single year I've had like a kind of a takeaway from it. And it's been vastly different. Sometimes it's about mixing, and sometimes it's about like, personal kind of communication, or sometimes it's about, in this studio environment, this is a really cool thing. So, I mean, it's all different, and it's all kind of based around who's there, and you get to know these people. Like, in the past, whenever we've had special guests, obviously, like we find a way for the people who attend to maintain some level of contact with these people, whether it's here's if you need, Brent to do some tracks for you, we'll make sure you have his contact info, like that sort of thing. So it's always a kind of a community building kind of a situation with the experience weekend. And that's one thing that I love about them.
It's always, I had a good friend from Atlanta to come see me this past weekend, and we were talking about, just the basics of how to get networked. And there's nothing that replaces sitting in a room with someone who, especially someone who has the same interests that you do. I know that I love Volkswagens, and I love going to, now that I live in Southern California, I love going to Volkswagen shows, because these people get me. They can correct a misconception that maybe I have, like a certain year model or something like that. And there's nothing like sitting in a room or out in the field in this case, and talking about something that you love. And that's it's just one of those things that I can't express it enough. There's nothing like networking this way. And when you get to know someone who gets you and who understands what you're trying to do and helps you get there, it's priceless. It really is. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So that basically kind of wraps up the conversation about this past year, because we had some really cool experiences. We did some tracking. We did some mixing. We watched, how another pro would take it for an entire, I think it was about 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that, and able to ask questions directly. Then we pulled up everybody else's mixes and listened to them, discussed them, and learned from each other that way. And in the midst of all of this, we're doing lunch, we're doing, coffee, we're doing dinners, and we're in Nashville. This upcoming year, we're going to be in 2018, March 15th, 16th, and 17th. We're going to be in Southern California, where you're at, Kev. So everybody's coming to you. Rather than you coming to Nashville, everybody's going to you. And you'll have a new studio that you're working on and basically custom making for this type of event for kind of the educational kind of a thing. And we'll be at the studio there with you. So talk a little bit about kind of what you're thinking. You said it's going to be a mix oriented kind of a thing. Talk about maybe some of the options of what people could expect from the 2018 event.
Well, we talked about this. I really am getting back to the first year we did it. It was just about mixing. It was about mixing and hanging out with people who mixed and basically listening to mixes all day long. And that's really, it's in its simple form. That's what it's going to be. Notwithstanding the conversations and the learning that happens, in the meantime, in the waiting, and before we start, after we finish, going to lunch, going to dinner, over breakfast, things like that. But yeah, I mean, this time I finally just thought I really want to simplify this. I want people to come see my studio. It gives me a good catalyst for really setting up my studio to accommodate some guys who are really eager to sit down and improve their mixing. So
very cool.
Yeah, and then plus, it's going to be in a brand new studio, my studio, which is still under construction right now. I've got everything set up, and I'm doing acoustic treatments and things like that. But in addition to that, we'll be in Southern California, where the weather's always nice, especially in March. When it's kind of hit or miss around the country, it's consistently around 70 degrees. And, there's a lot of things to see and a lot of really cool new people that I've networked with that I want some of my friends, new and old, to get to know and glean knowledge from them. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this year.
That's awesome. The best way for people to get more info is to head over to mixcoach.com/experience. We've got a link in this podcast, in the notes of this podcast, to go ahead and sign up for a kind of an interested form. It's just your name and your email and your phone number, and we'll put you on a list. And it's like, okay, so whenever this goes on sale, we'll let you know. And on this list, by being on this list, we'll give out a piece of what we did this past year at some point along the way. We recorded some of the things. We did a live stream of this past year for a couple of smaller segments, and one of those we'll give that away if we can get enough people to sign up for this list.
Right.
But then the other side of that is you'll be able to help shape what the weekend kind of is. We'll kind of gauge interest from and what people are more interested in from the people who are signed up for this list. So if you're at all interested, if you want any more information about the MixCoach Experience Weekend 2018, make sure you click the link in the notes. Head over to mixcoach.com. There's a post about it there as well. So we'll be in contact, I'm sure, over the next few weeks about when those seats will go on sale. We've already sold a few of them, pre-sold to previous attendees, but whenever they go on sale to the general public, we'll make sure that group of people knows about it first.
Right. And that link is going to be mixcoach.com/experience.
Awesome.
And yeah, where you can find out more information. We'll get a little bit of information from you. And if you're interested at all in improving your mixing, and it's an experience. That's why we named it the experience. It's all about, what you're experiencing when you're here. And we want you to, come for the experience and leave with the confidence. That's kind of become our mantra and our motto for the Experience Weekend. Come for the experience and leave with confidence.
This has been the MixCoach podcast. Make sure you guys head over to mixcoach.com/experience to sign up for that list.